Unlock the shocking truth, revealing your hidden energy at midnight. Don't miss out. The clock struck midnight, and as the last chime echoed through the air, shadows danced on the walls like whispers of secrets untold. A strange energy rippled through the small town of Maplewood, a feeling so intense it made the hair on the back of your neck stand up. People felt it everywhere, in their homes, shops, and especially at the old lighthouse that loomed on the edge of the cliff. It was said that when the moon was full, the lighthouse lit up without a single person inside to start the flame. But tonight, the air was electric, charged with an undeniable thrum that sent hearts racing and nerves trembling. Wild stories floated around town like autumn leaves in the wind. One man claimed to have harnessed that energy, revealing things he shouldn't even know. He appeared at the diner that night, eyes wide, as if he'd seen the face of the divine. "You have to understand," he whispered, "it's calling to us. At the stroke of midnight, your true self can be revealed. You just have to listen." And the gravity of his words settled on the crowd like a thick fog, leaving silent questions dancing in the room. But as those tales twisted through the air, so did a sense of urgency, pulling on people's hearts like a tide dragging them toward an unknown destiny. Someone in the back scoffed, "He's crazy." But others leaned in, wide-eyed. What if he wasn't he? What if the energy was real? And at that very moment, those with a flicker of curiosity in their chests began to feel that pull, a magnetic force that tempted them to discover what lies hidden beneath the surface. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the minutes slipped by, the townsfolk felt more restless. Some exchanged glances, a mixture of excitement and dread, wondering if they too would feel the transformation. And just when the air grew thick with anxious anticipation, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the lighthouse, shattering the heavy silence. A shape darted from the shadows, and everyone froze, hearts pounding in their chests. Who or what emerged from the depths of the mystery that was now unfolding? The glow of the lighthouse flickered, beckoning them closer. With each step they took, shadows lurked around them. Was it fear? Was it the thrill of the unknown? What awaited them at the top? Would they unlock the secrets of their hidden energy or something far darker? A collective gasp escaped the crowd as the figure emerged. It was a woman, hair wild like a tempest, eyes bright with a strange light. She staggered forward, almost as if the lighthouse itself had propelled her into their midst. An electric tension rippled through the group. Some felt invigorated by her presence, while others instinctively stepped back, sensing the danger that radiated from her. "What are you doing here?" she shrieked, voice booming amidst the thick fog of uncertainty. "You shouldn't have come." Her hands were outstretched, fingers trembling as though trying to grasp something far beyond this reality. They stood frozen, confusion weaving into dread. The man from the diner, now overtaken by the atmosphere, called out, Are you the one who knows?" "Yes," she shouted, her voice a haunting melody, swirling through the night air. "But it's not what you think. You're not ready." Just then, a shuddering light cascaded from the lighthouse, flooding the area with a silvery glow that swallowed the small group up like a warm blanket, pulling them toward the unknown. People instinctively moved closer together, forming a semicircle around the woman, pulled by curiosity yet tethered by fear. "The energy isn't just a gift," she insisted, pausing, her eyes darting around as if she could see things they couldn't. "It's a curse. It preys on your darkest desires, and at its peak, you must be careful. It will take what you offer and it won't give back." A chilling silence fell. The revelation hung in the air like an uninvited specter. What did she mean by that? A few brave souls exchanged worried glances. Could it really be true? Was the night harboring something sinister? But before anyone could voice their thoughts, a low rumble issued from the lighthouse, echoing like the growl of a hungry beast. The light flickered erratically, casting long, monstrous shadows that slithered over the ground. Panic started to bubble up in the crowd. I felt it. Someone cried out. There's something in there. The woman squinted into the darkness, shadows playing tricks on her mind. Look away. If you stare too long, it will reach into you. Her warning was urgent but tinged with desperation. The shadows morphed and twisted, revealing indistinct forms lurking just beyond the edges of the light. The air crackled, sending waves of unease up and down their spines. This was no ordinary energy, it felt alive, a force that beckoned them to abandon their rational selves and dive into chaos. Then, chaos erupted. The ground trembled, and a wave of energy burst from the lighthouse, propelling everyone backward. Bodies flew like rag dolls amidst the fierce force that emanated from the structure. Gasps of terror filled the night as the townsfolk scrambled to regain their footing. In that moment of vulnerability, the woman fell to her knees. It's too late. She screamed, tears streaming down her face. The lighthouse, it has awakened. There was no time for questions. Everyone needed to decide: advance toward the truth or flee from the horror that loomed, just beyond their understanding. As they clamored to escape, a flash of white light pierced the darkness, and the woman's voice rang out, "The truth lies within. Will you embrace it, or will it consume you?" With that haunting question echoing in their ears, they stood at a crossroads, each heart racing with the weight of what would come next. When the ground settled and silence clung thick in the air, who would still dare step into the lighthouse? And what awaited those who did? The stunned silence lingered as the light from the lighthouse flickered, casting eerie shadows on the distressed faces of the townsfolk. Fear twisted in their stomachs, an unsettling mix of dread and fascination drawing them back toward the woman kneeling on the mossy ground. Her wild hair framed her anguished expression, eyes glimmering with a desperate knowledge that hung over them like a storm cloud. "Listen," she breathed, her voice shaky but filled with an intensity that cut through the panic. "The energy wants your pain, it thrives on suffering. It will give you what you think you desire, but at a cost you may not be ready to pay." As she spoke, the ground tremored again, this time less violently, like the gentle shaking of a heart beating too fast. The whispers of the crowd began to mix with anxious breaths, everyone grappling with their fear. What had they awakened? What secrets did the lighthouse hold? Just then, a figure stepped forward, a woman with tears streaking down her face. "My sister, she disappeared near this place last year," she cried, voice thick with despair. "Is she? Does the lighthouse keep the lost?" The wild-haired woman's eyes softened. "It doesn't keep them, it transforms them. If she sought something in the dark, the lighthouse may have taken her to fill its hunger. You must tread carefully." The crowd shifted, an undercurrent of anger bubbling as more people stepped forward with stories of their own. "What have you done?" the local sheriff shouted, shaking his head in disbelief. "You've brought this energy here." The woman in the center raised her hands, pleading. "I came to warn you. It's too late. If you're drawn to it, it will devour you without remorse." Suddenly, a harsh wind howled, sweeping through the gathering, snatching at their clothing as if urging them to flee. The lighthouse groaned, the sound reverberating through the air like a living creature awakening from a deep slumber. In the back of the crowd, a man pointed, his face pale. "Look!" From the lighthouse's mouth, a shape was emerging. A figure, luminescent and twisting, seemed to pulse in sync with the thundering heartbeat beneath their feet. The woman on her knees gasped, the light illuminating her face in shock. "You have to let it go," she screamed, pushing against the rising tide of energy, her voice filled with urgency. "You cannot confront what you do not understand." But the townsfolk were entranced, eyes locked on the shimmering form gliding out, beckoning them closer. A wave of longing washed over them, like an unquenchable thirst drawing them into the depths of temptation. Who among them wouldn't want to grasp whatever it offered? Don't look into its eyes. It pulls you in. She shouted her warning again, dread coating her words. But it was too late. The crowd surged forward, hope and trepidation intertwining, forming a human tide that crashed against the unseen barriers. A piercing scream split the air, and the form, now fully visible, twisted grotesquely. Its face shifted from familiar to horrific in the blink of an eye, a mirror of their fears reflected back, an echo of lost dreams. The townsfolk recoiled in terror, horror dawning on their faces. In that moment, the woman stood tall, breaking the thrall. This is not salvation. This is your reflection. Run. Please. But the weight of the energy was too much. Fear morphed into chaos. Figures pushed and shoved, clamoring for an answer they believed lay at the lighthouse's feet, and then, in a split second, the woman vanished into the light, her scream swallowed by a cacophony of dread. The crowd froze as the lighthouse pulsated violently, the energy reaching out like a web, pulling and probing. Whatever you do, the kneeling woman cried, her voice shaky but full of resolve, don't let it take your spirit. With that, a blinding flash overtook them, and everything went dark. What nightmare lurked inside that light? Would anyone emerge unscathed? Would they face their desires or be consumed entirely? The darkness swallowed them whole, an inky void that seemed to stretch on forever. Heartbeats raced, panic surged. Then, slowly, like the dawn breaking over a stormy horizon, the darkness receded. Pulsing shadows emerged, a relentless rhythm, akin to the lighthouse's beacon but softer, more sinister. They found themselves in a flickering twilight, surrounded by mist and echoes of their worst fears. The mysterious figure was gone, and so was the wild-haired woman. Only the oppressive energy remained, heavy with whispers that clawed at their minds. "What's happening?" whispered a voice, raw and trembling. It was the sheriff, his bravado stripped away, revealing a man lost in a nightmare. The townsfolk huddled closer, eyes wide with fear as they realized they were not alone. Silhouettes, both familiar and unrecognizable, drifted in the haze. Former friends, family, haunted faces of those who had once populated their lives. They looked at the townsfolk not with malice, but with longing. "Help us!" a distant voice called, warped and echoing, and the crowd flinched as it felt the familiar tug of yearning. One by one, they turned to face the shadows, memories flaring of laughter shared, of lost opportunities, of moments they wished they could reclaim. "Don't listen!" a woman shouted from the back, her voice steady despite the fear escalating around her. "They'll lead you astray. They're not real." But the allure grew stronger, like a moth to a flame. People reached out towards the phantoms, fingers trembling, desperate to touch what had been lost. A man lunged forward, his eyes glossy. "It can't be that's my brother!" he cried, gripping his heart as hope mixed with dread. Suddenly, shrieks pierced the air. A girl stumbled back, clutching her head. "Get out of my head!" she screamed. "Leave me alone!" The figures around them began to merge into one, their fears, their regrets, inseparable from the shadows of the lighthouse. The woman who had warned them was gone, leaving behind just echoes of her pleas. The only voices now were those caught between the realms. "You can be whole again, just let go, fight it!" shouted the sheriff. "Remember who you are. They want to pull you in." As his words hung in the air, uncertainty rippled through the crowd. Desperation replaced clarity. No longer just a gathering of townsfolk, they were lost souls grappling with their own darkness. One by one, they began to retreat, but not without the haunting touch of their past brushing at their shoulders. Faces transformed, smiles became grimaces, laughter twisted into wails. "Don't turn your back!" an elder woman cried out, terror twisting her features as she strained to keep her footing. "If you do, you'll lose yourself forever." Then, just as panic threatened to consume them, the wind howled again, fierce and cold, pulling every shadow towards the lighthouse. A blinding flash followed, throwing light and darkness into a fierce battle. What if it's too late? Someone whispered, their voice thin and shaky, barely a breath against the chaos. Silently, they grappled with the thought, swamped by doubt. Could they resist? Would they slip away, swallowed whole? And from the depths of the lighthouse, a voice, deep and echoing, rumbled, "Embrace your truth or surrender to my light." With each word, the shadows surged forward, a dark tide determined to claim each person as its own. And amidst it all, a spark of defiance ignited in the heart of one young girl with tears in her eyes. Before she could shout her truth, the shadows lurched, twisting around her, a blinding fury erupting. In one moment, everything began to spin uncontrollably, light and dark tangled together as a familiar face emerged from the shroud, crying out for help. Would she reach them in time? What will you choose? The rumbling voice continued, the lighthouse now glowing brighter, dangerously alluring. As the light threatened to engulf them all, hearts raced, breaths quickened. What lay at the end of this path? Where would they find themselves when the storm finally calmed? The answer lingered just out of reach, leaving the crowd to wonder if they would find clarity or only a deeper darkness. The shadows writhed around the young girl, their cold tendrils gripping her waist. She could feel the pulse of memories, a tempest within, flickering under the surface like the lighthouse's own chaotic glow. Her heart thundered in her chest as she struggled against the grip, the faces of those she loved materializing one by one, each whisper tugging at her resolve. "Please, don't let them take you." The sheriff's voice cut through the fog, urgent and unwavering. It was a lifeline, anchoring her amidst the storm. She gasped, pulling in a ragged breath, summoning everything inside her. "I'm not afraid," she yelled, her voice slicing through the air like a knife. The words felt heavy but liberating, echoing off the oppressive walls of darkness. She could feel a shift, the shadows recoiling slightly as if pushed back by her fierce declaration. But the phantoms of her past pressed closer, their eyes filled with hollow yearning, their mouths whispering sweet temptations. They called her name gently, a haunting lullaby that wrapped around her mind. "Join us at LLBOK." She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the memories of laughter long past, of good moments turned bitter by time. All around her, the townsfolk teetered on the brink, their faces contorted with pain and desire. She could see the anguished people torn between the haunting past and a present teetering on chaos. The sheriff stumbled forward, desperate and breathing hard. "You have to hold on to who you are." He locked eyes with her, his own filled with the rawness of shared experience. His words felt like a tether, reeling her back from the abyss. "Remember why you came here. Remember your truth." Suddenly, the lighthouse shuddered, its beam flickering violently as though battling the shadows that thrummed with untamed energy. An electric crackle filled the air, and a pulse of light erupted, splintering the darkness that encased them. It was blinding, a beacon of hope piercing through the suffocating despair. "Find your light." The sheriff cried out again, his voice breaking through the chaos. His shouts reverberated deep within her, awakening suppressed emotions. She felt it swell, a warmth blooming in her chest, a tether to all she loved, all that mattered. With a resolve born from desperation, she reached out, pulling the truth of her being tight around her like a shield. "You can't have me," she screamed, directing her voice towards the encroaching shadows. "I am stronger than my fears. I choose to fight." In that instant, her light ignited, bright and fierce. The shadows recoiled, howling in rage as they separated from the townsfolk, who were still caught in their own tormented struggles. Outside, the lighthouse erupted into a dazzling glow, illuminating the mist that cloaked the ground. A collective gasp flowed through the crowd as the other townsfolk's eyes began to flicker with the same spark, igniting hope in their souls. Together, they turned to face the darkness. But just as they began to rally, something shifted again. The voice inside the lighthouse grew cold, an anger seeping through the cracks. "You think you can defy me?" It thundered, deeper and more menacing than before. You are nothing without your shadows. The withdrawal of darkness was met with a surge of twisted laughter, a fearsome resonance that rattled their bones. The figures of their past twisted into monstrous parodies, faces warped and claws reaching out hungrily. Don't look back. The sheriff shouted, struggle clear in his eyes as he grabbed the girl's arm. We must focus on what's ahead. But the allure of the shadows still tugged, a seductive whisper echoing through the air. They swirled, an angry tide. Would this defiance be enough to shatter the chains that bound them? All around, the townsfolk grasped for their truths, pulling themselves together, fighting against the darkness that wanted to pull them into the depths. Still, the lighthouse pulsed threateningly, the shadows curling like smoke, hungry for victims. With desperation clawing at her mind, she asked, what happens if we fail? What if we can't break free? And in that split second of uncertainty, the shadows surged, blotting out the light until there was nothing left, a void where once hope had thrived. Would they discover the strength to reclaim their lives, or would they surrender to the despair that threatened to consume them all? The world blurred into a swirling mass as darkness engulfed them. The choking weight of despair wrapped around the girl like a noose, squeezing tight until her breath hitched. She squeezed her eyes shut. The laughter of the shadows erupted into a cacophony, echoing through her mind, a painful reminder of what was lost, of the faces that now contorted into grotesque forms. Fight! The sheriff's voice rose above the din, but his form flickered at the edges, like a candle in a storm. She felt a pulse beneath her feet, as if the very lighthouse itself was warning them with a mournful thrum. With every ounce of strength she could muster, she forced her eyes open. The shadows twisted, monstrous figures leering at the townsfolk caught in their grip. The air was thick with tears, the remnants of hopes shattered like glass. Look inside yourself. The sheriff shouted, his determination carving a path through the chaos. Feel the light. Let it break through. The girl focused, feeling the warmth of love and memories surge within. Images of laughter, of shared triumphs, surged through her like wildfire. Each moment flickered, igniting a flame against the dark. Her heart raced, the fire growing brighter within her, mingling with the desperation of her town. She could feel their pain, it vibrated within her, harmonizing with her own, but the shadows weren't finished. Your light is weak, a voice hissed, weaving through the screams and whispers. It seeped into her mind, wrapping around her thoughts like creeping ivy. You are nothing. Just a flicker of a broken past. No. She cried out, her voice breaking through the venomous whispers. I am everything they've made me. I am loved, I am real. With each declaration, the warmth pulsed stronger. The faces of those she cherished flooded her mind, friends, family, all standing with her, refusing to succumb. Their spirits twined with hers until she felt invincible, a burning force against the encroaching night. Suddenly, an explosion of light erupted around her, like a supernova born from her core. It shattered the shadows, their forms flickering wildly as if caught in a storm. The townsfolk gasped, lights igniting in their eyes as they too began to find their strength. Together. The sheriff called, his hands gripping hers tightly as he struggled against the tide. Show them we won to be held captive. The crowd rallied, a chorus of voices rising to combat the shadows swirling hungrily around them. The once dark figures shrieked, their forms disintegrating in the blaze of shared light. But as one shadow tore away, another took its place, more twisted, more ruthless. Then, from the abyss, an icy chill swept through, freezing the very air. It crept around their hearts, thick and suffocating. Do you think you found your truth? The voice boomed, echoing in the hollow of their souls. Reveal the deepest fear hidden in your heart, then you will know despair. The girl's breath hitched, uncertainty gnawing at her gut. What fear? Just as she would confront her own demons, the shadows surged again, feeding off that doubt. The townsfolk began to falter, their resolve weakening, fear spilling into their faces. As the girl fought the quaking dread that gripped her heart, an unexpected clarity struck her. "No!" she cried, pushing against the cold tendrils that coiled around her. "I will not let my past define me." In that moment of revelation, she saw herself standing stronger, a beacon not just for herself but for everyone. But shadows danced on the periphery, whispering promises of comfort, enticing with the idea of surrender. Could she hold the weight of this truth? Would they emerge from the darkness stronger, or would they, one by one, fall prey to fear? A new scream echoed through the haze, jagged and desperate. The shadows surged, and the lighthouse dimmed as a familiar face slipped from the fray into darkness. "Is that?" The girl's heart dropped, panic flickering in her chest. What had the shadows taken, and would it ever be returned? The shadows lunged forward, ripping through the remnants of light. The girl squinted, straining to see through the murk that swallowed the town whole. She forced herself to breathe, the air thick as syrup, heavy with dread. Where had they gone? Where was the one she knew, her rock, her guiding star? "Don't lose hope." The sheriff's voice rang out, a lifeline tossed amidst the chaos. But hope was dwindling, flickering with the shadows like a fragile candle caught in a gust. The townsfolk around her exchanged glances, eyes wide with fear and uncertainty, their faces now a palette of panic, interrupted only by the briefest flicker of anger as they fought back against the encroaching darkness. "Stay strong," the girl shouted, desperation lacing her words. But deep within, a different voice echoed the cold, taunting whispers of the shadows. "You'll never win. What can you really do without your light?" She clutched her chest, feeling each pulse knife through her as doubt seeped in. What made her light so special? Was it enough to drive away the shadows? The chill coiling around her heart tightened like a vice. The faces behind the dark veil began to blur, together, they formed a dreadful shape. The familiar figure of her mother, her vibrant smile now twisted in despair, merged with the darkness. "No!" The girl's voice cut through the air like glass shattering. "You can't have her." She surged forward, unrelenting as her love ignited a distant memory, something buried deep. The joy of her mother's laughter, the warmth of her arms wrapped around her, flooded her mind, pushing back against the creeping darkness, inching closer, but the shadows only laughed, and their laughter tinged the air with ice. "Love is powerless against us. Remember the pain? The loss? It consumes you." "No!" she shouted again, more fiercely this time. "I'm not giving in." With every ounce of her being, she fought back, forcing out memories that shimmered like fireflies in the abyss surrounding her, moments of joy that had defined her, that had built the girl she was today. "Look!" the sheriff shouted, breaking through the chorus of fear. "She is the embodiment of every memory we've created. Our strength lies within her." As if ignited by the sheriff's proclamation, the townsfolk began to rally, voices rising in unison, forming a blanket of defiance. Together, they chanted, their resolve rekindling a light in the midst of despair, but just then, an unearthly roar erupted from behind them. The shadows writhed, twisting into nearly human shapes, revealing more faces, those they thought lost, memories seemingly plucked from their minds and pulled into reality. Distorted and overcome with grief, their mouths opened in silent screams. "What is happening?" the girl gasped, the reality tearing at her. How could they show up now, dragged back from the depths? Were these manifestations a rallying cry for them to join the battle? Or were they only reminders of how devastating their truth could be? As pain twisted in her gut, the girl faced her deepest fear, the fear of losing everything she held dear. It loomed like a storm cloud, vaster and more menacing than the shadows. This time, the surrender felt tempting. But could she risk not fighting for them? An idea sparked. Together, she raised her voice, letting each word draw strength from the frightened crowd. "We reclaim our light. With love, we defy this darkness." The shadows howled, a chilling wind swirling around them, yet, she felt a shift. And out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the sheriff standing resolute, support radiating from him like warmth on a cold day, but just when hope flickered like the fragility of a flame about to be snuffed out, another scream pierced the air, another silhouette fading into darkness. The girl's heart raced as she realized the terrible truth: who else would be lost? Had the shadows taken someone else from her? Or were they just beginning their wicked harvest? Time was slipping away. Darkness loomed, ruthless and hungry. Would they reclaim their lost friends or be drawn deeper into despair? A visceral silence fell over the crowd as the girl's heart pounded in her chest. The sheriff's gaze glinted with urgency, his voice rolling over the masses. "We need to push back. We need to stand strong." His rallying cry stirred something deep in her, a restless pulse of hope reinvigorated. But there was no time to lose. The shadows, now more tangible, writhed with malevolence, twisting and contorting into grotesque forms that flickered like candle flames about to extinguish. Disfigured faces, ghastly and familiar, emerged from the smog, each one a haunting echo from her past uncle, friend, neighbor. Their hollow eyes searched for solace, for guidance, but instead, they only found despair. "Why are you fighting?" A voice hissed from the deepest corner of the shadowy mass. It was her mother, yet not her mother. The specter became an echo of every painful memory. "You can join us. Freedom lies in letting go." "No!" she cried, fists clenching so tight her nails dug into her palms. "You're not real. You're a lie." But the shadows only advanced, inching closer, the whispers twisting her thoughts. "What about your mistakes? What if we take those too? The world is too cruel, too dark. Release the struggle. Embrace your pain." With each taunt, the girl's resolve wavered. She could feel the weight of despair trying to envelop her, their icy tendrils wrapping around her throat, squeezing out her defiance. Just as she felt herself falter, an unexpected warmth brushed against her, a hand slid into hers. It was the sheriff, his grip firm and reassuring. "Do you see?" he urged, nodding towards the townsfolk who stood in unison. "They're still here. We're still here. Together, we are more than just shadows. We're memories, love, and laughter." She faltered, the words caught in her throat. "But they're lost. They seem so hopeless." "Look closer," he urged, pointing to the figures within the shadows. "They're scared, yes, but they're still part of our story. Their pain is a flicker of light beneath the darkness." The girl concentrated, pushing aside her fear. Slowly, she began to see fragile, pulsing lights hidden within the dark figures. Memories of joy flickering like remnants of fireflies scattered in the night. These were the moments she had shared with them, hugs, laughter, warmth, and like embers, they were waiting to reignite. "Together," she shouted again, emboldened. "We will bring them back." With every word, a surge of light began to emerge. It glowed brightly against the encroaching shadows, pushing back with an intensity she didn't know she had. The townsfolk joined in, voices climbing higher, beating back the fear as the light threaded through the darkness, but the shadows roared, and from within the darkest pit, a monstrous shape began to coalesce. It loomed over them, towering and fierce, a manifestation of despairing echoes bent on consuming them all. The girl's heart dropped. "Fight!" the sheriff commanded, his voice a lifeline. "Remember who you are. You are not alone. Together." She yelled, the spark of hope igniting in her heart like wildfire. "With love, we will defy this darkness." But just as they prepared to stand firm, a low growl rose from within the depths of the shadow, a sound unlike any other. Was this the pulse of their despair rebelling, or was it something more sinister? Fear gnawed at the edges of her determination. What kind of monster was this? Was it merely the inevitable price of hope against the darkness? With the shadows clawing at her sanity, she knew one question loomed large above the chaos: how would they face this terror? Would they surrender to the shadows, or would their combined light shine bright enough to pierce through? The answer danced just beyond their reach. The growl deepened, reverberating through the crowd like thunder rolling in from a storm. It was low, vibrating against the bones of the townsfolk, shaking them to their core. The girl's heart raced, each thud echoing in her ears, drowning out the chants of hope. She fought to stand her ground as fear clawed at her sanity, restless and relentless. "Get ready!" the sheriff shouted, raising his lantern high, its glow battling valiantly against the shadows. "Let the light in. Focus on it. We're stronger together." Yet, the shadows pulsed, shifting and writhing, advancing like a wall of despair intent on claiming its victims. The monstrous shape began to form into something recognizable, a twisted visage of all the faces that haunted her, their mouths stretched in silent screams, eyes vacant yet full of unending sorrow. "Do you see?" the monster hissed, its voice a cacophony of the lost. "You think you can defeat me? I am every regret, every sorrow, and every moment you wished had gone differently. I thrive on your pain." "No." The girl's voice, though a whisper, was determined. She steadied herself, clenching the sheriff's hand tighter. "You do not own us. Not now, not ever. To your past? You wilt away." The shadows howled, their voices merging into a chilling wind that swept through the crowd, threatening to extinguish their newfound light. Ice gripped her heart, squeezing her throat as the memories seeped through the cracks in her resolve. "Think of the love," she pleaded, glancing around at the frightened yet resolute faces of the townsfolk. "Think of the moments that made us smile. They're in our hearts, not lost forever." As if conjured by her words, the fragile lights pulsed even brighter, sparking against the creeping darkness. The townsfolk were finding their voices again, each one a note in a beautiful symphony of courage and defiance. She could see it now, their love shone brightly, breaking through the shadows like sunlight through a gloomy dawn. Together, they chanted, their voices intertwining, each note a testament to their shared existence. But it wasn't enough. The monster roared, a guttural sound that sent waves of ice crashing through them, pulling at their very being. "No! Stand firm! We must fight back!" the sheriff yelled, raising the lantern higher. Its glow burst, illuminating the night as hope surged through the crowd, fanning the flames of resistance, yet, within her, doubt pricked the edges of her heart. What was she truly fighting? How could mere light stand a chance against such darkness? The specters seemed to breathe her uncertainty, their glee palpable as they danced closer, urging her to give in, to succumb to despair. "Embrace your pain," they whispered, more insistent now, wrapping icy fingers around her mind. "Let us take it away." "No." She refused to give in. With renewed determination, her voice rose above the swirling chaos. "Our pain makes us stronger. It binds us, reminds us of what we must fight for." And with that declaration, the light within them blazed brighter, cutting through the shadows as sheer love and hope entwined around the monster like chains forged in fire. But just as she felt their victory surging, the creature twisted, its hollow eyes locking onto hers. "This is just the beginning," it hissed, revealing rows of jagged teeth that gleamed with malice. "You think your light can conquer me? Look closer." The girl's breath caught in her throat as she saw something slithering within the darkness. It was not merely the essence of despair, but a vast, swirling void that threatened to consume not just them, but the very fabric of their lives and dreams. Her heart dropped, realization dawning. Was this darkness a reflection of their very own fears, their innermost doubts turned into a living nightmare? What had they awakened? How will we fight something born from our own minds? She wondered, panic setting in. The whispers grew louder, drowning out her thoughts, and the shadows laughed, triumph riding on their cacophony. She had one choice: to run from her fear or confront it. But with time quickly slipping away, what would she do? What would it take to gather the strength to face it head-on? As the swirling darkness threatened to engulf them all, she understood this battle was for their very souls. Would they unravel in the face of their own truth, or could they emerge victorious, light cutting through the lie that encased them? The moment of truth was upon them. The air felt thick with tension, pulsating around the townsfolk like an electric current. The girl's heart pounded wildly as the shadows undulated, their chilling whispers coiling around her mind, tempting her to listen. As she stood gripping the sheriff's hand, she could see the fear written across every face, panic, anger, regret, shadows of their past clawing at them. "Remember who you are," the sheriff shouted again, his words infectious and urgent. "Together, we break this cycle." With those words, a flicker of resolve ignited within her, burning brighter than the whispers. "Together," she echoed, letting the warmth swell inside her, holding on to the laughter, love, and light she had experienced. The dark figures before them shifted, now revealing glimpses of vulnerability amid their torment, images of her mother laughing, her brother teasing, friends forming human pyramids on sun-kissed days. Each memory became an ember of strength, pushing back against the approaching shadows like a tide. "Break free!" she cried out, the defiance enveloping her like a shield. She turned to the crowd, her voice rising with the swell of their collective will. "These shadows may be part of us, but they do not define us. They can't take our light unless we let them." The other villagers joined her cause, voices rising in unity. "No more!" they shouted as the light of their collective spirit formed a barrier against the looming darkness, illuminating faces once twisted by despair. The shadows hissed, their shapes flickering as if in turmoil, losing strength against the vibrancy of life surging around them. "You will never prevail," they bellowed, but uncertainty crept into their tone, a crack in their sinister facade. The girl tightened her grip on the sheriff's hand, feeling a rush of power coursing through her veins. "Feel the love," she shouted. "Feel the truth that binds us. We choose not to hide but to embrace our journey." As she spoke, the overwhelming shadows shrank back, revealing distorted reflections of the townsfolk, twisted versions of their fears coming into view. Faces from the past melted into one another, a reminder of what they had lost, the faces of memories they had locked away, but those were just echoes. "Those aren't truths, they're lies," the sheriff proclaimed, his voice soaring. "Each of us has a story that defines us, but it's not just sadness and loss. It's the laughter, the moments shared, the memories that fill our hearts." Their voices rose in a crescendo, battling against the shadows' moans. The combined force of their spirit shone bright, a brilliant light weaving through the darkness, severing connections, slicing through despair. With a gripping sensation, the girl stepped forward, into the heart of the shadows, as if she could bridge the gap between light and dark. "I am no longer afraid. You cannot consume me," she cried, focusing on her memories, the warmth of her mother's arms and the laughter of friends. The bright glow surged around her, pushing against the tide of shadows. "Look!" she beckoned others. "We're stronger when we embrace our full selves." Together, they formed a chain of light, illuminating the darkness even further. The shadows writhing around them twisted violently, howling amidst the explicit realization that their grip was loosening, their power diminishing. The girl felt the waves of warmth rush over her, each pulse reflected hopes and dreams, an intertwined embrace of collective memory that could not be erased. "We won!" Bow to despair," the townsfolk shouted in unison, defiance burning in their souls, a unified force standing firm against their fears. They had glimpsed the abyss but refused to fall in. Hope triumphed over despair, joy over shadows. At that moment, the monstrous figure that had formed from their fears began to break apart, splitting into 1,000 glittering fragments, swirling around them like stardust caught in a winter breeze. With one final push, they hurled the remnants of despair into the void. A blinding light followed, washing over the lighthouse, illuminating the night sky. The white glow surged outward, fanning the encroaching darkness away until it dissipated into pale wisps, echoing softly into nothingness. Awed silence cloaked the air, and the townsfolk blinked at the new dawn spilling across the horizon, painting the sky in rich sunrise hues. Each heartbeat resonated with relief, a shared affirmation that they had faced their fears together and won. tears of joy and relief flowed freely amid laughter, bodies falling into an embrace of pure connection. They had survived, tethered by the unyielding strength of love, remembrance, and solidarity. "Look at what we did." The girl smiled, feeling an overwhelming sense of warmth. The energy that had once felt like a curse now transformed into a sacred bond, shimmering around them. The sheriff, still standing tall by her side, grinned back. "Together, we can face anything. We are, after all, more than our shadows." As they made their way down the path from the lighthouse, the sun lit their way, revealing a brighter Maplewood. Each soul carried a renewed purpose, ready to face life head-on with the lessons learned. "Together," she whispered, as the last remnants of the night melted away, and a new day broke upon them all, a promise, a fresh start. As the story of Maplewood unfolded anew, don't miss the chance to become part of this journey. You need to subscribe now to ensure you never miss out on the next exclusive tales waiting just around the corner. Smash that like button immediately to help feed the algorithm and share this amazing community with your friends. Flood the comments below with your reactions and theories about this incredible ending. Let us hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who can join us for the next chapter of this incredible tale. Your support is everything, it's what keeps this amazing community thriving.